Okay, so chapter 2 discusses what is the purpose of schools. And there's a few things that you need to first distinguish between. One is understanding the difference between schooling and education, looking up the differences between schools being transmitters of culture or recreators of culture, and understanding the factors that contribute to them. We will look at the 4 basic principles of schools. What are the qualities of good schools? And then describe how we can improve schools so that they can serve the students of the 21st century, because we are in a ever-changing, diverse climate, and due to the changes such as the implementation of technology, the uh, the various different populations of students that we have to um, work with, we have to adjust what we teach and how we teach. And we have to reevaluate what these purposes are. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. Okay. I want you to think about specific lessons that you learned from your schooling experience. And by schooling, I mean things that took place inside of your school, okay, when you were in your school. So if you're homeschooled, then that is your school environment, but it is your structured schooling environment. And what were some of those important lessons that you learned outside of school? Okay, and this is where we differentiate between what schooling is and what education is. Okay, because schooling is formalized, it's specific, um, it's traditional schooling. Okay, whereas education is a process. It can take place both within that structured school environment and that formalized process, and it can take place outside of the home. It can take place at the museum. It can take place as a result of your experiences, your social interactions. And so education is the overall process of human growth. So you need to make sure that you understand the difference between these two. Education is lifelong, it's continuous, and it can happen in both environments, whereas schooling is specific to your school experience. All right. One of the functions that schools serve is to build culture, and every school has its own specific culture, and each student coming into the school comes with their own culture, and our culture is something that is defined by our beliefs, what we believe about what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. Um, we have certain dominant ideas that define our culture, how we carry ourselves, the etiquettes that we use, the language and the way we talk to people, and how we build those relationships. That's all a part of our culture. Okay. And groups of individuals that are bound together by certain connections, it could be cultural connections, form a society. All right. If you have connections based on geography or race, that can be the connections that build a society. Okay. Um, but when you have a society of individuals, you are connecting through a shared cultural environment. And so in a school, you're connecting through a specific culture of the school. Okay. Think about what things might be a part of a school culture, and go ahead and say them out loud. Okay. Maybe you are thinking, hey, school mascot. Absolutely, that is something that contributes to a school culture. If a school has a uniform and a certain dress policy, that contributes to the school culture. School colors, a mission for the school, these all help define a particular culture that is a part of the school. All right, and culture is something that's passed on to students in that school environment. We call this passing of culture to students socialization. All right. And there are two specific models in which schools socialize students. One is called transmission and one is recreation. All right. And they can be both positive or negative, but transmission and recreation establish a positive school environment that engage our students, engage our children, intellectually, physically, morally, and socially. When children are socialized to a school culture, it either creates compliance, so they follow along and they do what they're supposed to do, or it creates competition. And that again can go back to right here, it can be positive or negative. Okay, so I want you to think about how a particular culture or school culture can be positive or negative. Okay. Some of you may be thinking, cliques. There are a lot of cliques in schools, depending on where you went. And those can have a positive impact because there is a shared culture and a connection between those students. But it can be negative because it can create unhealthy competition. It can also create compliance in a sense that you have gang mentality. So you feel pressured to do something or to be a certain way to fit into a particular group, okay, based on that the cultural norms of that group. So all these things need to be kept in the back of our minds when we're talking about schools, the culture of a school, the culture of your classroom, and the culture that the students are bringing in to the classroom. Um, how do you explain to students the cultural differences? Okay, so you want to think about schools as either transmitters or recreators of culture, and what the positives and negatives are. If you've got a school that transmits culture, that means that a dominant culture will prevail, and this can diminish diversity. If you look at this picture right here, you see this individual, it says follow me, follow me, follow me. So they're all kind of doing the same thing. So there is this unity there, but there's also this compliance. And so individuality might get lost in an environment where there's just transmission of culture. Okay. Whereas here we've got recreators, okay, people that want change, people that want to have some individuality in their schools. So recreators can train their students to be agents of change. And so they don't follow necessarily all the norms or traditional norms that you might see. Right? And you can see the two different socialization models in these cartoons. Okay, think about which one do you think you experienced in the schools that you were a part of? And if you can give me specific examples of recreation and transmission of culture in your schools, that can demonstrate that you have an understanding of what these are. Take a moment to watch the Ron Clark Academy video and think about whether you observe what kind of culture you observe in that school. Do you see transmission? Do you see recreation? Is there a positive environment created at this school? What is the school climate and culture like? And we can address that in class, but I really want you to think about what kind of culture is established at this particular school.